Okay. So we will keep this light and entertaining. I'm Vivian Martinez. I work with Converge Public Strategies and have been in the transportation and public affairs role for about 10, 15 years in a variety of different positions. So really excited to moderate this panel today. We've got some really esteemed experts in this area to talk about micromobility today. So I'm just going to have them all introduce themselves.
Good afternoon. My name is Jeremy Mullings. I'm the director of a program of the Florida Department of Transportation called South Florida Commuter Services. Long story short, we exist to help get people out of cars. If you own a car or intend to own a car, we're hoping that you can see the value in some other modes and maybe not drive that car, especially by yourself, every day to work. That was about the program. You want to hear about me?
Sure.
Sure. So, I'm an Aquarius. I like walks on the... So I have the fortune, or some may say misfortune, of starting my career in marketing. I'm a trained marketer. I worked in marketing long before I found out that transit is a thing. I will say that once I got into transit and started learning about it, I've always thought, wow, this thing could never stand up to competition. And then in 2014, Uber and Lyft went national, and ridership nationally plummeted. And I started saying, okay, maybe I was right. Now, what are we as an industry going to do to respond? So I'm pretty excited about some of the things I'm seeing. I work really closely with the gentleman at the end there. I'm at Miami-Dade Transit, DTPW, so I'm excited for you all to hear some of the things that they're doing. So I'm ready for the hard questions. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. So I'm Brian Estep, Executive Vice President with Endava. I oversee our mobility business with a particular focus on mobility as a service. I'm also on the board of directors of the International Mass Alliance Group, if you're familiar with that. And Endava is a global systems integrator, next generation technology company. And we seek to be to help build the connective tissue around all the different mass players and parts. A little bit about me. I'm actually a software engineer by education, computer science graduate. Did that for about 15 years before I moved into more of the business side, started a business, and here I am. Thanks.
Hi, everybody. My name is Juan Carbonell. I'm the global head of sales for MoveIt. MoveIt is the largest urban mobility platform in the world with 1.7 billion users in 112 countries, 3,500 cities. We've got about 350 micromobility partners integrated into our back office, so we really are quite deeply involved in making sure that public transit still becomes the backbone of all future mobility ecosystems, mobility as a service ecosystems. So very much focused on multimodality, getting people out of the car, acknowledging that car as part of a multimodal journey plan, but starting to facilitate more and more transactions away from the vehicle to complete journeys from end to end. A bit more about myself, born and raised here in Miami, but I've been overseas for the last 20 years, 5 years in England and 15 years in Australia. Just came back to Miami about 9 months ago and learning the ropes of a much more obviously broad and complex transit system here in the US. So really glad to be a part of the panel today.
All right, excellent. Good afternoon, everyone. Doug Bermudez with Miami-Dade County, Department of Transportation Public Works. I'm the Division Chief for Easy Car Services, and that's the unit of the department that delivers on the customer service experience. Again, I'm looking forward to sharing what we're doing with respect to the county and how we're moving forward with transportation.
So thanks, everyone, for those, a quick outline of why we've got these smart folks up here. Why are we going to listen to them? Earlier this morning, Mayor Levine Cava talked about world-class cities having world-class transportation, and that's 100% right, and something that we're all striving to make sure that we are able to support the world-class transportation for the cities that we're living in, not only in Miami-Dade County and other areas. And Mayor Suarez talked about customer service really being important. And so let's talk about how do we get people out of their cars? How do we make a system convenient so that people want to be able to use, whether it's a train or on-demand system? And let's start off the conversation today with what steps can cities use to entice customers to get out of their cars? And I'll just kind of have everyone give their 2 cents about it and then get into something a little deeper. Doug, why don't you start over there?
Sure. One of the things that we're doing with respect to the county, obviously, traffic is an issue, and we need to be creative, and we need to find responses, and we need to find collaborations with the private sector, and also with the municipalities. With respect to that, we are, the Department of Transportation, we develop a Shift 305, again, and that's a innovative and a strategic vision that addresses Thrive 305, which is the mayor's initiative, countywide. Under that, one of the things that we've done, we have integrated regional fairs. We now have fairs between Miami-Dade Transit and Tri-Rail. We deployed Go Connect, which was the county's first on-demand service, again, and that addresses the first and last mile. And we also done bike initiatives. Again, these are just some of the examples that we have undertaken with respect to mobility. How do we reduce traffic? How do we promote mobility within the South Florida region? These are the building blocks that we're working on, to get to a seamless transportation throughout Miami-Dade County and South Florida.
Great.
I'll add to that. I think, make it cheap, make it timely, make it efficient. So it starts with good bones, right? Having that really good, accessible, easy to engage with public transit system. Once you've got good bones, then the other element is discovery. So how do you entice people to get out of that vehicle, to look around, to see what options are available to them? How do you let them know it's even out there for them to take? And then comparing all the different modes to each other. I think that's the really strong fundamental piece of mobility as a service. So level one is just bundle it all together, let people see it and compare based on their preference, what's more important to them. I think from there, I'm a technology guy, so I'm going to talk about how technology enables the physical kind of experience. It's, understanding time of day considerations, mobility patterns, where people are trying to go, and then bundling different types of mobility together at a subsidized rate to give them a much cheaper, a package or engagement for mobility, once again, enticing people out of the car. So the car is so dominant here. We have to acknowledge that the car is a key consideration in all mobility options, particularly in cities like Miami going forward for the next 5 to 10 years. So we're not trying to do away with the car. We're just trying to acknowledge the cars in the room and give people the right data, the right information, the right innovation, or incentives more like it, to kind of mode shift just even once or twice away from the car and then changing that behavior. So that is a very difficult, long, and painful process to do, but it has to start with goodwill. It has to start with, getting out there and shaping the mobility marketplace out there and making it more easy to access and affordable for the general public.
Brian, what are your thoughts?
So I would say there's a bunch of things that could be done that require different levels of investment, right? So maybe on the lower side would be more focused on the technology and making the experience, the user experience better. Lots of cities have apps and, they're hard to find. It's hard to know what app to download. And then when you get in the app, it's not done from a user's perspective, and it can be difficult to understand how to navigate the app and actually book, modes on a journey. The other thing which requires a lot more investment would be just availability of more mobility options, and mobility hubs would be a significant advantage.
And I would just say very simply, by asking the right questions, and I think you asked the right question, and you used the word twice, actually, and it's acknowledging that people who are trying to get onto mass transit, they're customers. Right? And when we have the conversation and all we're talking about is origin, and we're talking about destination and travel time, propensity to crashes and so forth, we haven't talked about a single human factor. We're talking about people as if they're freight. And once we acknowledge that they're customers, and every rider is a choice rider, all the questions start to answer themselves after that. And it's the way we will approach it, the way we fund projects, the way we design projects. But I think that's fundamentally where we need to start.
Okay, we're done here.
Thanks.
No, I am a customer, and today's a great example. I'm not sure I should share this, but in any case, I had all intentions on coming on the Metro, taking the circuit and getting here. And then I looked at the time, and I'm like, okay, so first it took me 15 minutes to figure out which app to figure out which way to get here. Then I'm like, okay, it's going to be 10 minutes difference. Oh, 10 minutes isn't bad. A lot of times, the 10 minutes it takes sometimes a little bit longer don't make a difference for the benefit you have, not only for the environment, the mental health of not getting stuck in traffic, but then there was some traffic and I had to turn around the block, and then the parking was closed, and I'm like, you know what, I'm just going to drive. And I was like, it should just be easier. And I think if it were easier, then people would get out of their cars. So how do we solve for that? And we've heard a little bit, generally speaking, but I'd love to hear some real examples of ones you've been involved in or ones you've experienced. What works and what has gotten you out of your car or someone you know? Who wants to hit that one first?
Let me take a step for that. One of the things that we've done very effectively at Miami-Dade County, obviously, the regional fairs. That was one thing that we actually successfully kind of integrated between Miami-Dade Transit and Tri-Rail. So that way you can connect, obviously from Miami-Dade County Metro Rail to Tri-Rail to continue your journey. The other thing that we've done, obviously, provided more bike lanes, more bike path for whether you're walking or whether you're using a bike or e-scooter. Obviously, everyone can use different modes of transportation to connect to the main line. The other kind of initiative that we've done successfully, our partnership with Velocia, where we actually rewarded individuals for using different modes of transportation. That was extremely successful because obviously it's a change of behavior, and then we rewarded individuals, for them to opt instead of using transit, not during peak times, but off-peak. But again, so these are some of the things that we've done successfully in Miami-Dade County.
I'll jump in. So we run, so Move It runs an annual, basically like transit survey to see literally at probably about 300 cities around the world, how people feel about public transit, and asking the same question, like how can we make public transit more accessible, easier to use, and obviously increase uptake. And the top three things that we saw pretty much all around the world is frequency is really a core consideration, that it comes more than once an hour. So I'm not waiting on the street, street side in a hot summer or like rainy Miami kind of day to get that next service. So that's definitely a key consideration. The other element is around better real time. So I want to know where my bus is. So once again, I am at the right place at the right time. And the last thing that came up time and time again was simpler faring and more affordable faring. So I think those three elements, which are, very, in this kind of modern day and age, very easy to solve from a technology perspective, really just improve that customer experience. It gives people the right data at the right time so they can make that decision. So I believe those are the three key points there.
Good.
I'll chip in. It's more of a marketing issue. So FDOT, Florida DOT, funds this express transit service that brings folks who live in Broward County to employment centers in Miami. Really nice buses, coach-style buses. Ridership took a huge tumble in COVID. And even though fixed route transit saw some semblance of riders coming back, these routes did not. About 99% of the riders are choice riders. They either have the option of working from home or driving their cars. Ridership was struggling. So my team and I, many of them are here today, we went through an exercise and we decided, you know what, we need to highlight the benefit of this bus. It rides in the express lanes, they're coach-style vehicles, Wi-Fi, forward-facing, comfortable seats. And we went through this rebranding exercise called changing it from express bus to express coach. And we implemented a referral program where existing riders, we call it Share the Love, existing riders shared or referred their friends, co-workers to the program, and we gave them a very generous incentive, a month free. And you know what? Ridership came back in gangbusters, and it's doing very, very well. We get a lot of kudos from DOT for it, but I can tell you one of the most uncomfortable parts of that process was working with the transit agency and getting them to agree that, because the word express coach doesn't roll off the tongue, but I think it makes a statement, the word coach. And we said, hey, we're going to do an informal online social media survey. Simple one-question survey. And we threw the question out there. What comes to mind when you hear the word bus? That's all. We just threw it out there. Now, I'm going to try to leave the profanity out of the responses, but I'm sure y'all can imagine what the responses were. Homeless shelter on wheels, Ebola, those types of things. So that was what convinced them to rebrand it, and the rebranding exercise worked. And the folks who ride it, they're high-paid people, doctors, professionals, and so forth.
Yeah, I think it's kind of if you build it, they will come. If you educate people about it, they're aware of it. I mean, I think people generally want alternatives. It's making it easy. It's having the customer-centric focus, and also, part of it is raising that awareness not only in the individuals but in businesses and that sort of thing. So Brian, why don't you tell us a little bit about what you think, how we can accelerate the use of multimodal, and we heard a little bit from Doug on some incentives, but what are some ideas that you think would be helpful in making that connection?
Yeah, thank you for that. A little bit of a different take. So, I think a way we can accelerate this is, and let's face it, the traffic is from commuting, right, from the work commute. And why don't we get the businesses involved in solving this problem, right? So, one thing that we're trying to take to large corporations is the concept of corporate or B2B mass, which is essentially the business providing a mobility as a service platform and solution for their employees that can be subsidized by the business, and can be there can be gamification and things like this. They have a lot of control over how to incent the employees to actually use the platform. In return, the business gets to reduce their Scope 3 emissions, which is the hardest one to actually directly impact. As far as the public sector is concerned, maybe there's ways that they could help incent businesses to want to do this as well. Maybe discounts or something like this across the platform.
Anyone else have any thoughts on this question?
Yeah, I've got something to add there. So I think we're within the world of Move It. We're starting to look at cities and dissecting cities into mobility islands. So this concept that and I think right now the current maturity of MAS is okay, one policy applied to an entire city, and that somehow is going to move the masses. But in reality, we all know that there's different demographics, different mobility needs, supply considerations, all across cities. So how can we start carving out and dissecting cities into different mobility islands, and then applying different levers and policy into those islands? So if there is a very affluent neighborhood where they have average, 2+ cars at their home, how can we, entice them with subsidized Uber trips to get into a shared mobility option? Versus if there is a lower socioeconomic kind of neighborhood, how can we give them free mobility to help them, enable them get to work and to actually, be a part of society in all different facets? So I think the next level here is actually getting more high resolution with the way that we solve problems all across cities, and then taking that data and constantly improving across seasonality, across major events, and other considerations as well. So I do see the market heading that way more in the next 2 years.
So a follow-up, Jeremy, to what you mentioned about your express coach. So you get folks from point A to B, and so sometimes that doesn't get them to where they need to be, maybe. So how do we connect those dots? How do we make it convenient for them to then take a scooter or a microtransit or an Uber or whatever it is to get to their destination and really make it seamless? How do you see that whole continuum?
First and foremost, the will, right? I think our industry got a wake-up call with what happened, what I mentioned in my intro in 2014. We've gotten accustomed to basically having an out. We always had an out. Why no one likes transit? Because, we don't get the funding. They only want to prioritize the roads. We always had that little comfort zone we could go to, and that's our go-to excuse why things aren't working. And then we had a wake-up call in 2014, and it got worse. And people were paying money. And I have the data. I don't know if I'll be able to get to it today, but we have very specific data that shows even folks who we call, transit dependents will take Uber for $20 to go and work $8. On some days, and some days they will spend the $2 to ride the bus. And they make that decision on a trip-by-trip basis. But it takes the will. I'll shout Tri-Rail out. There's one of our colleagues from Tri-Rail sitting there. They were willing to pivot. They were willing to try new things. They used to have shuttle services that provided that first and last mile connection to their stations. They decided to do away with the shuttles and embrace first and last mile connections using Uber. And it's working like gangbusters. And the data shows that many of the riders who are coming back after COVID are new riders. And, we help them with the marketing of that, and we call the program, from our perspective, Tracks to Uber. And every now and then I'll get the question, well, Jeremy, you're using government money to promote Uber. And what's actually happening is Uber's promoting us. Uber has strong brand recognition and a positive response from the public, and we're using that to promote our program and get riders onto transit of all things.
Interesting. Doug, you had also mentioned some of the incentives and things that you guys have done to help reduce traffic. I mean, you've got Miami-Dade County is huge, so many different options. But what innovations are you looking toward moving forward? I know you started the pilot with, originally it was a pilot program, I think you're expanding that. So tell us a little bit about what's kind of next.
We're going to continue to build out Go Connect. Obviously, extremely successful. We're averaging, about 12,000 rides per month. So right now we actually have 4 areas. that we actually provide service. So we're looking to kind of build on that because that addresses the first and last mile gap that we have. The other kind of initiative that we're looking to build on, obviously, we know that traffic is an issue, and obviously we cannot continue to build more parking lots and obviously highways. So we need to kind of have that discussion, how do we leverage technology? How can we incentivize people to leave their cars, to give us a try? Because things have changed. We have, the number one thing that any rider wants, it's a reliable service. So we have listened, thanks to Shift 305, which has 4 core goals, which is to be safe, clean, efficient, and connected. So with that being said, our goal is to connect, all the modes of transportation, whether it's whether you're walking, whether you're biking, and obviously have regional connectivity. So we have increased but our metro rail service, because again, that's the number one issue. People are willing to pay a little bit more as long as they can rely on a reliable and dependable service. So we're looking to redesign our bus network through the Better Bus Network. So these are some of the building blocks that we're taking to address and to kind of incentivize people to use transit and also rewards them.
Yeah, it's been really successful. I think I've seen personally, like I said, I often take the rail and Go Connect, and I've seen quite a bit of increase in it. And I think, like you mentioned, the reliability is the most important thing that helps get people out of cars, because your car is going to get you from point A to point B as soon as you turn the key, but knowing that you can reliably take the metro, you're now able to see in Google Maps what time it's coming, what stop it's at, where, and then connect to something else. It really makes it easier. It takes that stress out of it. Am I going to make it to work on time? Is there reliable transportation? I think once you build that reliability into the system, then people are more willing, because they can't be late to work, or they can't be late to the doctor's appointment, or whatever the case may be.
In addition to that, let me just kind of butt in for a minute. Public engagement.
Yes.
Communicating to our community what we're doing, everything from the new BRT that's scheduled to go, live within a year or two, within a year and a half. So again, we're communicating, we're engaging with respect to the service that we're providing, and also addressing the issues that have come before us.
Yeah. So in terms of the customer experience, we talked about, there's sometimes different apps. People don't know how to pay. Do I use the card? Can I tap? Brian, tell me a little bit about what technology is doing potentially currently already in some systems, or what we're looking towards, again, to reduce the friction and make it easier and, again, more reliable for people to use the system.
Well, it's all about reducing friction, right, and removing friction. So, some of the things that are happening, I think, is a step towards improvement is, the move from closed loop ticketing systems to open loop. Which again, now you can tap your watch or your card, which reduces friction and makes that a lot easier. But it's at the end of the day, it's still a loop system, right? So, I think the next generation of this needs to be looking more to what Europe's doing around open payments. That's going to be the game changer.
Yeah, I definitely agree. There's a lot of things to learn from the folks overseas. We are trailblazers in many cities here, but I think Europe's got some things right. Juan, tell me a little bit more about the building blocks you had mentioned earlier. What do you think are some important steps? I think that there's will in a lot of places. There's sometimes funding issues, or the different things necessary to build the different parts of a system to work. But tell me your thoughts a little bit more about the building blocks and what you see would make sense.
Yeah, great question. So fundamentally, if we have a great, safe public transit, network that people can use as a backbone for mobility across the city, some of the fundamental elements to start building multimodality in cities is, first of all, just data sharing arrangements between the different mobility service providers, the e-scooters, the e-bike, the different partners that are out there, back into the agency to just facilitate, hey, where are my assets? Where do people go from A to B? What are the mobility patterns across the city? Not just in vehicles and public transit, but of course on the sidewalk, on the curb, and many other factors from there. So it starts with really just a really good partnership between agency and private operators to start sharing data and to create a more communal view of mobility throughout the city. Once you've got good data, then you start getting in, further into the bundling of services, understanding that mode changes, obviously, within public transit creates a, I don't want to use the word deficiency, but it definitely creates a penalty that people don't like. They just want to go on one trip be done with it. So how can you incentivize people through bundles or other means to be willing to take that mode kind of shift and continue their journey? So something that we're starting to do with one of our partners in the city of Jacksonville in North Florida is, for example, drawing geofences around all the parking lots in the city. And whenever someone has the MyJTA app, the Move It brand, like the Move It rebranded MyJTA app, it'll pop up, like a geofence is wrapped around these parking lots. It'll pop up with a notification saying, you could have parked here and taken the train in and avoided all this traffic. Use this code for your first free park on us and try it once in mode shift. So part of it is knowing where all those mobility assets are, bringing it all together, bundling it, and then finding different tools to start mode shifting. As I mentioned before, seasonality and other considerations, and having different mobility packages to then start shifting that mode once again out of the car and back into other forms of shared mobility.
So Doug, building off of that, it sounds like what Juan's talking about is helping break down some of those barriers. So talk about the challenges from your side of the coin.
I think some of the challenges, obviously, we live in a very diverse community, and obviously not everyone has the same income level as well. So we have some individuals that, for lack of a better word, economics, it's an issue for them to actually get a credit card to use to board our system and to pay for it. We have economically disadvantaged individuals that may or may not have the means, to actually use transit. But how we are addressing that as an agency, we actually have a couple of programs that kind of addresses kind of like individuals, whether they're low income or K through 12 programs. We have an array of programs that we kind of that we promote. We have our corporate discount program, which is obviously for the business, for them to entice them to, to pre-purchase the fare media for their employers. We have the K through 12 program, to kind of generate a buzz for them to actually get them early, for them to adopt public transportation. So we have programs that address some of the needs, but obviously funding is an issue to maintain the system, to actually expand the system. And we're looking for, a more integration with our regional partners to provide a seamless transit system throughout the region.
Beautiful segue, regional partners. So, Jeremy, tell me about how you integrate. I know you cover a pretty wide area. Tell the audience a little bit about what it is, the area you cover, and how you work with different regional partners.
Sure. So we adopt the general philosophy of, well, we're not really global, but, think global, act local. And it's kind of in line with what Doug was saying. We're such a diverse region. The program that I represent, we're from Vero Beach and Indian River all the way down to Key West. And if you're familiar with the way South Florida and the Treasure Coast are set up, we're talking about completely different spectrums of existence. And it comes down to just understanding what the local issue is and making those folks feel counted and understanding their needs as individuals. For example, a part of our program is promoting carpool. I will tell you directly. One of my project manager from DOT is over there. They don't like when I say this, but the name of our program is South Florida Commuter Services. It is a horrible name. It is not marketable. I can't walk around in the public and tell people, hey, remember the name of our program. It's awful. But when we're promoting,
I don't disagree.
But when we're promoting carpooling, right? We're in Miami. We're in South Florida. Miami is a cool city. It has a cool connotation to it. We use the brand Carpool Miami. Our website's carpoolmiami.com. When you start to get to Indian River or St. Lucie County, they don't want to hear about Miami. So, but, Carpool Indian River doesn't sound good either. So then we just do floridacarpools.com for those folks. And that's one example of how we kind of act locally with our strategies. But kudos to DOT again. We have these express lanes on I-95 that can be very expensive. If you carpool and there are 3 people in the carpool, you use those express lanes for free. So there you go. Spread the word, everybody.
So everyone register. So we've got a little over 10 minutes left. I want to give everyone an opportunity to kind of give their magic wand over this question. Basically, it's, again, how do we make multimodal trips convenient? You pick your point of the discussion, but what would you do to solve the problem, if you could? Why don't we start with you?
Okay, well, I'm happy to be here, right? It's a lovely audience. You're all such a beautiful audience, don't you agree? And the reason I'm happy to be here is that we have this mix of policymakers, entities that are able to to fund transportation projects, the capital investment, the operation, the hard-to-find operation and maintenance investment. And then we also have the private sector here. We have the innovators. By all means, they're profit-oriented, and I'm that guy. Not everyone loves that approach to it, but I believe the private sector is where the solutions are going to come from. That is why when we were asked to participate in this, they didn't have to finish asking the question. I'm like, yeah, we're there. What do we need to do? Because we need to be here where the innovators are. We need to hear that insight. We need to hear the challenges. Oftentimes, we in the government space get in our own way, and we prevent great ideas from getting implemented. I was a part of a workshop, or in the audience of a workshop earlier, where the time it took to process the paperwork to implement a project, by the time it was implementable, it was outdated. And so these are the things we need to get beyond. I'm happy to see so many representatives of the public sector here, to see these projects, these cool, innovative ideas, to get excited about them, to start to bring back to their agencies what it is that they can do to streamline the processes to get these things implemented.
100%. Brian, what do you got for us?
Well, there's a lot that, I'd love to be able to solve. I think I'll stick with the payments aspect, and really, if we were able to solve that for the community, I think that would be really powerful. It's actually a much bigger challenge than I think most people in the mobility space even understand. We've got a long heritage in the payment space, been in that for over 20 years. We helped build the rails behind MasterCard and Visa. So we're very knowledgeable in that space, and when I think about how payments should work in a multimodal mobility framework, what we really need is something more like a roaming account base, right? So it's open payments, but it's also a roaming sort of account base. And what I mean by roaming is you think about how your cell phone works, right? And you go to another country. It just automatically connects to that telco and works, right? In the same way, you should have one account for your transit, and you should be able to go anywhere in the world and get on the London Tube or whatever, right? And that's a really, really, really hard problem to solve. And if we were able to take on that challenge, that would be great.
So let me ask a question regarding payments in some municipalities now going to like a free service or a free to the public type of thing. So a discussion I was listening to earlier said we don't necessarily want to go free because that creates its own set of problems, but we want to maybe have an ID card or an account or something where there's still accountability and there's still a way to have people use it, but it's not like the doors are open, you just walk in. So is that system that could be involved in your payments plan? It's kind of the non-payments plan?
Well, that's the beauty of it being account-based, right? So if somebody qualified for some sort of discount or something like that, it could just be applied at the account level.
Love it. Okay. What do you got, Juan?
All right, so adding to what Jeremy and Brian both covered there, absolutely agree with all of those points. I think it's coming back to that customer experience, the customer need, hyper-personalization. And elements of that is like understanding the demand that's out there, so understanding what the customer need is, where they're trying to get to, peak versus off-peak. And then once you have a better demand profile of how people are moving around that city, then really getting back to what supply is available. Where is my my micromobility, my on-demand services, and really just taking it back to the basics of where do people want to go, what supply is available, how can I bring in private industry to augment and supplement public transit where there might be deficiencies in the timetable or even hitting on-time performance elements. And just really taking it back to that, that customer experience and that hyper-personalization element. So I think if we start with the customer, we see, for example, demographic information around pricing, faring, et cetera. We can address that. If there's need for universal basic mobility wallet functionality, we can address that on an individual level. And then really just getting back to the supply side and making sure that there's always an available and close option to somebody to, once again, compete with the convenience of the car. So I think in the next 3 years, the technology's there. I think the policy needs to catch up a little bit, and the willingness of governments to get to that level of personalization having just come back from two, very socialized countries, the UK and Australia. Coming back to Florida, I've had a really interesting time, hearing things like, we don't want to track individuals, that's their freedom, we don't want to get that personalized on our services. So there has to be a balance somewhere between, understanding a de-identified and aggregated mobility pattern, respecting people's freedoms, but getting close enough to their need to really tailor those services to them. So I'm still trying to figure it out after 9 months being back in the US, and hopefully for the next CoMotion, I'll be able to share more.
Awesome.
Yeah.
All right, Doug.
Yeah, just to add to what Juan said, it's, I think we're actually in the right time, because I think there's an appetite for for us to work collectively as a region, not only with our regional partners, but also with the private sector, because we need to solve the issue with respect to traffic. Obviously, the county/government cannot do it by itself. We do need a collaboration, and we need to think outside of the box, and be creative about it. Obviously, the service has to be there. And then we can continue to build the building blocks, that we're currently doing. When we go back to having an integrated payment system, that's a plus. And about the customer service experience. So we do need, to hone down and drill down to make sure we have that for the region, not just work in silos. So again, I think, the fact that we're having this discussion, there's a hunger and appetite to address that issue. And I think this is obviously the first step, and that we're moving in the right direction.
Can I add really
Please.
quickly? And so I hope I'm not blowing up your spot here, Doug. So, and in line with that, just to show that he does practice what he preaches, I accidentally stumbled upon a meeting with Doug and some other folks from DTPW meeting with another transit agency. And I was blown away to see it, because I've always thought we need to see more of that, the transit agencies working together, especially where we have folks who regularly cross county lines for employment. So there you go. And I saw that for myself. He isn't just talking.
Yeah, I think that there are also lots of large municipalities around the U.S. that have figured out ways to integrate with many different regions. And I think we've done a lot of great work here in South Florida. I think there's a lot of a way to go. I was very encouraged by the words this morning by the mayor and it being a priority. And I think, as you mentioned, breaking down the barriers and challenges with procurement many times. There's great ideas, and I know the private sectors come to the table with some ideas, and kudos to Miami-Dade County for working on lots of pilots to get to that first step, to then show that it will work, and then work into a longer process if necessary. But I think it's definitely, like Doug mentioned, the timing seems to all be coming together. We think we need to keep pushing. We need to keep having events like these to have those conversations, because I think the will is there, and I think fundamentally we're getting closer and closer to breaking down those barriers and those challenges in conversations like these. And so I appreciate everyone's time and thoughts. Quickly, as we're wrapping up, anyone have any final thoughts they want to wrap up with before we quickly go to any questions? Go for it. You had something to say.
Go ahead. Well, I was gonna put you on the spot and ask you to share this what you were telling me about, this thing called Guaranteed Ride Home program.
So
and Go Connect.
And Go Connect. Yeah. So as I mentioned, am a user as often as I can, and I found out about a program that they offer where essentially if you're going in early to work or late and you're missing that last mile. I was taking the metro home. I got on the metro. Found out that it was the last ride of the evening, couldn't get to where I needed to get, and later found out there's a program that they offer that will guarantee you a ride home, essentially, if you commute on a regular basis and are out of a ride for a variety of different emergencies. And I signed up the other day, and I can't wait to start it.
There you go.
And I use Go Connect, the program that he uses, an on-demand system. From where I live, it's in a Go Connect region. I dial it up on demand. It comes 5 minutes, 10 minutes later. It takes me to the metro rail station. I take the metro rail station to the airport, and I'm gone doing my work. And I love it. But the reliability is definitely a big part of it. Now being able to look at the timing, make sure, okay, when do I need to wake up? When do I need to set my alarm? When do I get to the station by? It makes it really easy. And to the point where my husband and I now actually share a car. I got rid of my car, and my daughter now has it in college.
Nice.
And so we're a one-car family at home, and I try to use the transit and combination thereof as much as possible. So that's my testimonial. Any questions from the audience?
That means we either did really well or really
We
bad.
got one. We got one.
Okay.
I'll ask one question on the pavement. Why couldn't that be an expansion of SunPass from FDOT? So, I mean, SunPass, if you think about it, I would say most people in Florida have an account. So you already have an account. You already have the back office. You already have the financing and all. It started on the tollways. I think the last tolls was Monroe County line, Rickenbacker. A few of those were the last holdouts. Now, any bridge, any toll in Florida is now SunPass. And now I think you can go to most of your airport parking garages. So wouldn't the next SunPass 4.0 be transit for the entire state? You just have a credit card, SunPass credit card?
Is that a Doug question?
You know what? That's an interesting concept. However, we need to address the unbanked people. So that's an issue that we would have to address because obviously we do have kind of like a mixed kind of like account-based system. We do have sort of like an open payment that we're looking to kind of do the account base. But again, that's an issue that if we were to consider the SunPass, obviously we have a segment of the population that we would need to kind of either find a solution for them to tap into that opportunity. So.
And this is not speaking on behalf of FDOT, by the way, but I can tell you in the past, I've been privy to conversations regarding at least the 3 counties in South Florida getting on one fare medium for transit. And technology wasn't necessarily the issue. It more had to do with political policy that slowed that down.
And commercial. So the people that own the road asset aren't always the same people that are operating public transit. So there's kind of like counter-agency agreements. And there is, it's funny, the tolling tech and the transit faring tech, even though there's a lot of similarities, they are like 2 very different industries. So it's finding the right partner that can merge, technically the gap between both of those industries and then getting the different agencies to agree to allowing something like that to happen. It's already happening, by the way, like in Australia and Sydney, they're doing a project just like that where Cubic is doing ticketing in the back office. They have account-based ticketing, and the next-gen ticketing product that they're going out for will include tolling as well as public transit fully integrated. So it's just a matter of time. It's a good suggestion, good question.